Hello everyone!
Hello, I'm Fabrizio.
And I'm Virginia. We are two students of the Polytechnic of Torino, and today we want to talk about the regulations in the supersonics.
Oh yes, I think it is important to understand this aspect of supersonic flights because it helps in understanding where the problems are and, at the end, why it seems so difficult to have supersonic flights today.
You're right. First, do you know something about these regulations?
I know that all certification rules for supersonic aircraft were shaped around the Concorde, which was the only civil supersonic aircraft operating in Western aerospace.
You're correct. The problems arose when the Concorde retired from flight operations in 2003. A new generation of supersonic aircraft would be limited by the regulations drawn up for the Concorde and by subsonic noise and emission certification limits.
I am assuming that subsonic and supersonic aircrafts have different necessities and technologies and should thus have different regulations either.
You're assuming correctly. The existing regulations are mostly obsolete or non-applicable. Moreover, in the last 20 years, it has become clear that regulations must consider also environmental impacts that are specific to supersonic flights, such as the impact on the stratospheric ozone layer.
I see. And I know that here is where More&Less takes its part. More&Less wants to provide a recommendation to regulators to shape global environmental regulations for future supersonic aviation, and it has identified some areas for which setting regulations or standards is considered necessary.
Yes, you're right. How do you think it happened? Where do these results come from?
More&Less has identified these fields of operation through research and, importantly, through the dialogue with the EASA, the European Authority for Aviation Safety, and FAA, Federal Aviation Administration in the United States.
Well, doesn't this mean that More&Less' approach is in fact a global one?
Yes, it does.
So tell me, which is the first area of interest for regulations according to More&Less?
It is a dilemma to be solved: supersonic versus subsonic. The big question is, should the supersonic and subsonic aircraft have the same certification level?
Oh, that's a tough one. I wouldn't know. In terms of noise and emissions around airports, it would be challenging but still feasible. The real problem is carbon dioxide emission.
You're right. In fact, the current rules are not applicable for supersonic aircraft unless some peculiar parameters, like speed, are considered to balance the limitation.
And what about the non-carbon dioxide emissions?
Well, supersonic ones are higher. This is a fact, and the impact of supersonic aircraft on the ozone layer has been known for a long time, but since the number of supersonic flights was small, regulations were never written. However, this might change in the future, thus regulations are needed for sure.
I imagine that regulations must be written also around the operational restrictions involving the sonic boom. Over land, sonic boom is not covered in a worldwide regulatory frame. In general, supersonic flights and sonic booms are forbidden or not regulated, depending on the country. Clearly, a globally harmonized approach is desirable, if not necessary.
You're right. Moreover, the advent of low boom designs could offer the opportunity to consider supersonic flight over land under certain conditions.
Oh yes, and what about local air quality? I'm sure it's affected by supersonics.
Yes, it is. Some regulations used to exist, but they are outdated and thus need to be rewritten. We say that on airport neighbors, subsonic limitations could be respected. So that's good. Deeper research is needed in fuel composition.
Yes, you're right. For instance, SAF, sustainable aviation fuels, and potentially hydrogen seem to facilitate the reduction of environmental impacts of supersonic transports.
So to sum up, More&Less feels the urge for new regulations in supersonics. It is analyzing regulation problems related to the balance between subsonic and supersonic aircraft, operational restrictions as the sonic boom, and specific approaches related to the supersonic, which need to be further studied. More&Less cooperates with the EASA and FAA and transmits its ideas to the CAEP, Committee on Aviation Environmental Protection.
Precisely. If you want to tell us something about supersonic regulations, just write here in the comments.
And don't forget to follow us on X, TikTok and LinkedIn, following the links in the description.
If you want to know something more about the activity of More&Less, about regulations in the supersonic world, visit the dedicated page on Cordis Europe. We leave you also this link in the description.